live or is it lying? Ooh. Whoa. Cool. So, I'm gonna mute myself on Twitch. Oops, I accidentally closed the tab. I'm really smart. Okay. Time to mute myself correctly this time. Okay, so welcome to the podcast, me. So today I thought I would speak a few words on a few different things. Number one, our actual thing of what do you call it? Actual subject matter, which is going to be my review of Cilvia Demo by Isaiah Rashad. But I wanted to mention two things. So first thing, today the XXL freshman list for 2021 came out, and I actually really hate it a lot. When I look at the XXL list this year, the only person I see ever going anywhere is Moray, and that's about it. But if you look at everyone else, we've got a YouTuber and just a bunch of other people who are like kind of okay, but I don't see them going anywhere in another year or two. And I think that's the issue with XXL, because I feel like there were so many missed opportunities here. I know that Snot was offered spot, but then declined it. But they could have gotten SSG Kobe, Cochise, so many other people who are coming up right now, and they just missed that chance, which I thought was a really bad job on their part. I felt like there was so much more they could have done, and they just chose not to. Next up, I think we should... Oh yeah, Tyler, the Creator, he's back. So he recently dropped a new single. I think it was called like Lumberjack or something. I listened to it like once or twice yet right now, but it was pretty good. I liked it for a couple of reasons. With the biggest of which is that I'm hoping this sets the tone for the rest of the album, or the rest of the upcoming album. Because if it does, I'm going to be very happy. So I feel like it was very good because it kind of mixes his already singy voice, I guess, he developed during Flower Boy and Igor with his old hardcore rap stuff. And I think that's where he shines most. I think as a singer and, in that sort of genre, he's good too. But I think he is best as a rapper first and foremost. And I think that if he's able to mix those two things, he's going to really go far. And he's already gone really far, of course, but further. So that was good. Now, let's get to the meat, that being the actual album review. So, Cilvia Demo. So this is Isaiah Rashad's first album he released in 2014. After that, he released The Sun's Tirade in 2016. He's been fairly silent so far, but nowadays he's kind of back into the swing of things, and he's going to release an album probably this month or next month. So I thought it would be nice to look back and see his first body of work. So Cilvia Demo is kind of an interesting album for me, because when I look at fairly newer artists' first albums, I don't really see a whole lot of innovation, I guess. It's more or less the same thing. 1 second. Okay. It's more or less the same thing that they've already been doing, or that everyone else is doing, really. And I don't see much innovation within that first album, but you can't expect too much, because it is, after all, their first album. So that's okay. But when I think about Cilvia Demo, I think about something a little bit different, something a little bit new that maybe other people aren't doing. So basically, it was good for that reason, because it was something interesting. It was kind of a little bit more thoughtful, a little bit more well produced, I guess. It wasn't just this simple and plain big 808s and bass. It was something a little bit more refined, and I think that's really good, because if you see a new artist doing something so complex so early, it really sets the tone that they can go really far later on, and I think he's proved himself in that way. That being said, I do feel like another thing that he could have done is shown a little bit of versatility in the album, and I'll get into that in a little bit. So first up, so here are some of the big themes I've noticed in the album. I listened to it pretty carefully. Is his father's bad influence on his habits, just teen life, recklessness, that sort of thing, and alcohol abuse, and also, I guess, religion, I guess, is also playing a big part in this. Now, let's go through the individual tracks. So there's 14 of them. I'm going to try and talk about them somewhat quickly so I don't drag this on to myself. I'm not even talking to anyone. So, number 1, Hereditary. So Hereditary is the opening track here on the album, and I think it was kind of interesting because it's your run-of-the-mill opening track. It's fairly short. It just kind of sets the tone. So we've got, he speaks on his father's influence. So there's like lines like, my daddy taught me how to drink the pain away. My daddy taught me how to leave somebody. My daddy taught me to smoke my load and go. And it does set up a lot of the themes here, especially his father's influence, some of the alcohol abuse, and things of that sort. But otherwise, I think there's not much to say. It does have good production, as with the rest of the album. So next up, we've got Webby Flow. So Webby Flow, which was actually one of my more liked tracks on the album, in my opinion. It's pretty interesting because it's actually a tribute to the rapper Webby from Baton Rouge, who was really, really big in the South, especially during the time that Zay was growing up. So it's kind of a tribute in its style to that. So in Chattanooga, where Zay is from, Webby was like really popular. And really characterized a lot of his younger days. So Zay captures that as well in the song by being a reckless teenager, of course, having your mind plagued by thoughts of women, alcohol, so on and so forth. And it's it's really just a little bit of a time capsule. But otherwise, I think it was kind of a decent enough track. And like I said, it does show that he has a little bit more maturity when it comes to production, which is a theme for the rest of the album, I'd say. So next up, the title track, Cilvia Demo. So Cilvia Demo, I forgot to mention this, but Cilvia is the name of his crusty Honda Civic. So that's kind of an interesting little thing. So it samples a really like an older song that was pretty good, and the production there was really, really nice for that song because it was pretty laid back. He has a great flow that kind of floats on that, and it does show that as a new artist, he was on XXL Freshman List this year. He's really mature, and it's really interesting to see someone so mature that's also so young in the game. But otherwise, there's nothing much there. So next up, you've got R.I.P. Kevin Miller. So the production here is for Black Metaphor, who gets major credit for this track, and I would say to a sense even carries it a little bit. And Zay floats on the beat really well with the really nice dreamy piano sample, but otherwise the lyrics are kind of just repetitive and more or less the same as the past 3 tracks. And but it flows well because I think to a certain point you shouldn't care about how technically good it is and just how nice it sounds. And I think that's where it should be no matter what. Yeah, and on to the next track, number 5, being Ronnie Drake. So this is the first track out of the 2 featuring SZA. So Zay and SZA actually have quite a good relation. They've been on all of each other's projects and form a really good duo overall. My hair looks really bad. They form a great duo, and they do well really when they're working together. So they really complement each other's style and everything. So this is the first really intensely lyrical track because it really does speak on race in the second verse, and kind of this whole idea of nature versus nurture, how people in poverty are kind of forced to be into crime, things like that. And and in verse 1 he speaks on the rap game and how something really interesting I've noticed is that over the years people don't care about lyrical rap anymore. They just want basic 808 bass, I think everything can be characterized by like Annalie Chapa. Uh, and I think that's okay because it's how what people like eventually, because there's no right answer when it comes to what music is good. And it does show that, however, when people do spend a little bit more time when it comes to production, they don't get as much attention purely because it's not what's popular. And I think that's kind of tragic. And I see a lot of smaller rappers kind of not getting any attention purely because of their style. And yeah, Kendrick Lamar said something similar a while back. So, track 6, West Savannah, also featuring SZA. So this one is where SZA really gets to shine, I'd say. It samples an Omari track, which I think went really well for them, because it kind of gives this really nice, melancholy, tragic sort of sound, especially in the hook, which is actually sung by Zay and SZA together, which is kind of cool in my opinion. It was very interesting to see them both kind of working together like that. And yeah, so the instrumentals were really great. And it does really set the tone, because if you think of other tracks that they've made together, like Stuck in the Mud on the Sun's Tirade, they all do kind of build on this idea, I guess. So, next, and this is the middle. So, I never say this right. I think it's Soliloquy. So Soliloquy is, I'd say, the most forgettable track on the album. It does feature kind of heavier bass and has an overall darker tone from the lyrics and to the production, but otherwise it's really unremarkable. It was just intensely mediocre, which isn't a bad thing, but it's kind of just okay. And I think this is also where we kind of see that all of the production on this album so far has been pretty repetitive. It's been the same sort of jazzy piano or that sort of thing, and it's all been sort of small, I guess. It's not had a big voice, and I think it's okay. It's nice if it's to listen to, but if you're listening to this like 7-8 tracks in a row, it starts to get a little bit boring. And I think that's also something you can chalk up to it being his first album. He's not that experienced when it comes to this kind of thing yet. But, you know, it was one detractor of the album. So next up, we've got Tranquility. So Tranquility is where it kind of moves on a little bit. So we've got a little bit more of the lyrical style that was in the previous, like from tracks 0 to 6. And it does pick up back on the theme of alcohol abuse. And otherwise, I'd say, yeah, it is just the same kind of song as the past 6. Really, there's nothing interesting here. But it was otherwise just kind of more lyrical, I guess, than the past 6, and that's the only good thing I can say about it. So, alright, next track, Menthol, featuring John Doe. So, John Doe is a singer, and I hadn't heard of him prior to this, but he's pretty good. So, this is another track that really proves that he knows how to work well with different styles. He's worked well with R&B, that being SZA, and he's worked well with this guy, John Doe, who's also kind of a R&B-ish singer, I'd say. And that goes well. They both complement each other's styles well, and it's kind of the production, I guess, is, like I said, very similar. And like I said, that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that it's repetitive. I guess if you're listening to the tracks individually, it's okay, but if you're listening to all of it at once, it's a little bit exhausting. So next up, we got Modest. So Modest is where it picks up. The last 4 tracks are, I'd say, vastly better, not vastly better, but pretty, like, better than the first 10. So we've got Modest. Skipped one. So we got some variation in production. So we've got not like a kind of a darker tone to the production, a little bit harder. And Zay also gets progressively more aggressive as the track goes on, in his voice and his lyrics, everything. And it's kind of about how he handled his newfound fame, and I guess his brotherhood with the rest of Top Dog Entertainment. and otherwise it was a good track because it was kind of a nice wake up after the past 9. And then we've got Heavenly Father. So Heavenly Father is actually the most popular based on streams, and I don't think it really should be. I think there are better tracks on here. So we've got more about his father's bad influence, and Isaiah also starts by singing, which is also a breath of fresh air because it's kind of, prior to this was just hardcore rapping, lyrical rapping, and the production is more positive, and SZA also actually is on this, but not that, didn't do enough to get a feature, and she has these like dreamy vocals for the hook, and it all kind of blended well. So it's also somewhat longer than the rest of the songs in the album, seeing as the rest only had around 2 verses. This one has, I think, 3. So Heavenly Father is a nice wake up. And then we've got Banana. So Banana, in my opinion, is one of the best songs on the album, but also the least popular. Because it actually is kind of the first aggressive song on the album, despite being towards the end. And otherwise it discusses about the same themes and does show some variation in tone. So that's what I love about this song, because it's kind of different than the rest. This is where he gets to explore his more aggressive side when it comes to rapping, things of that sort. Next up, we've got Brad Jordan featuring Michael Da Vinci. So again, Michael Da Vinci is not someone I'd heard of prior to this, but he's another rapper who is criminally underrated. I think he deserves a little bit more attention. But yeah, so he's got it's a pretty exciting track in terms of tone. And it does, of course, it's the same sort of lyrical stuff. There's not much variation there, and like I said, for a new artist, that's perfectly fine. But yeah, so another great track, different kind of beat. Which brings us to our closing track, Shot You Down, featuring Schoolboy Q and J-Rock. So when I saw the features on this, I immediately assumed it was going to be like a really hard song. But it really wasn't, I guess. It was kind of more of a slower pace song, but that was fine. It shows that he had good chemistry with TDE, TDE is kind of more of a brotherhood or a family, and I think that this track really shows that well. But yeah, so that's all of the tracks. So in general, the album was pretty good and very, very good for his first album. So like I said, it was really boring to listen to for the after a couple tracks, as they kind of got repetitive. But it picked up towards the end really well, and I think it was great because it showed how Zay can be a lot better, I guess,